Hi there, I'm Cindy Davis, Content Director for AV Technology, and today I'm here with Hall Technologies CEO Ken Eagle to discuss a pretty hot topic these days, USB 3.2 transmission. Thanks for joining me, Ken.
Hey, thanks, Cindy. Happy to be here.
Great. So the industry's been talking about USB 3.2 for a while now, but first, provide an overview of why this technology is so significant.
Yeah, well, I think everybody's familiar now with the term USB. And what's confusing, I guess, about USB, and you and I have talked about this in the past, is there's always new versions of USB, right? We go all the way back to the USB ones, then the twos, and then the dot 2.2s, and then the 3.1s and 3.2s. So there's a lot going on there. And then we couple that with the fact that the connector type on USB changes from maybe USB A to USB B to USB C. So now you've got connector types and different versions of the firmware of the USB. So it makes it a little bit confusing, and there's a lot of pieces there, and sometimes they're compatible, sometimes they're not. Some older ones have, were built on their previous technology where they allowed a certain amount of bandwidth. Newer versions now have more bandwidth and a new connector type. So the history of USB is that it's kind of always been changing, and so we're always trying to keep up with it and figure out where it's going next. And why do we really want to keep up with it? Why is that so important? Really, two reasons. Number one, and this is a really big one, it's bandwidth, right? The more bandwidth we get, the more data we can push over that USB signal. And then we can talk to newer technologies, cameras with higher resolution, et cetera, more compatibility. Those things all make a really big difference. Plus, the industry starts to make a change, and then we are forced to jump on. For example, try to buy a laptop today without a USB-C connector on it. And just because it has USB-C doesn't mean it's USB 3.2. It could be an older version still, or it could be a charging or not charging. But you now have a device with a USB-C connection, and all of the previous USB products you had have USB-A. Now you got a problem because you got different connector types on the cable. So there's a lot that happens with USB, and power delivery becomes a big piece of it too. Let's not forget about that. Whenever you plug a device in, everybody always wants to charge over the USB, and you can't always do that. So there's a lot of things to consider with USB. The target's changing a lot, and it's not always obvious when you start working with a product. Does it check all the boxes that I need checked for this particular application? So I guess I'm unpacking a lot of stuff there, but
No,
that's
that's great.
right. It's a big box, honestly. USB.
Absolutely, that's great. Um, and okay, is this Caribbean? Is it 3.2 or 3.2?
Right? I know it's crazy. We often now say 3.x because there's a couple of versions. 3 came out, then a 3.1, then a 3.2, and they each add something a little bit more. In general, with the technology, if you're buying the newest version, let's call it 3.2 in this case, generally then you're going to be backwards compatible to the 3.1 or the 3.0 or the 2.2 or the 2.0. So there's kind of a rule of thumb you could look at there.
So is the dot two about bandwidth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really about getting more bandwidth out of the product.
Great. So I know obviously Hall has some new products out, but talk about how Hall is using 3.2 that's different than others, and what are some of the applications?
Yeah. So I think you said the right word there, applications, right? We all have access to the technology and can use it in different ways, but you've got to think, where am I going to use USB? What are the most common applications? And then I can start to come up with a product that answers questions or solves a problem for that application. So we look at two of the most common ones, the corporate environment. So when I say corporate, we're talking about your huddle spaces, your conference rooms, your boardrooms, and anywhere where maybe you're engaging in a live Teams or Zoom or some kind of a collaboration session, because in that kind of a session, you're going to be connecting to USB devices. So 3.x now, that USB technology becomes really important in those rooms, because every year new technology comes out and we put these new technology in a room. For example, let's go to a 4K camera instead of a 1080p camera. Well, that's going to require more bandwidth. And and maybe it requires a 3.x connection to that camera. But if I'm using devices in the room that pass 2.2 connections, I might be limiting bandwidth or bottlenecking the ability for that camera to send full resolution into my presentation or my online session like we're having right now. So it becomes really important in that environment. Likewise, the same thing's true in another application that's really important, and that's education. Whether that's K through 12 or higher education, you're still engaging in a similar kind of environment as the corporate environment where you're potentially presenting to a group of people and or you're connecting to somebody who's remote, dialed in or connected online via Teams or Zoom or other kind of session. And if you're doing that, you're then connecting to these USB peripheral devices in the room. Again, cameras, certainly, microphones, even other systems outside of the room to communicate with other parts of the technology in the building. So the USB 3.2, 3.x becomes really important. And Hall is now incorporating that that technology rather, into our new line of products that we've released here in 2025. And you'll see more at InfoComm coming up as well for the rest of the year too. And something else to note about what we're also doing with that technology, and I think this is a really, really important piece for the application, it's charging. So the ability, when you plug in that single wire using a USB-C connectivity, USB style connector rather, into a 3.x USB port from Hall, you're going to get charging on that. We offer that in 60 watt or 90 watt versions. And that's a really big deal because if you're doing a presentation and you're up there for, you've done this 45 minutes or more, what happens to your laptop if you're not plugged into a power connection somewhere? The battery dies in the middle of your presentation. And so having the ability to charge becomes really important, especially in like an education environment now, where maybe you're an instructor, you've walked into a classroom, especially when you get into higher ed, where maybe you're an instructor who's teaching in a different room every hour. You're moving around, you're not locked into a single classroom. You need to be able to make sure your device is charged. So having that USB-C connection and being plugged in gives you that ability to charge while you're presenting without having to think about it.
That's actually very significant. So this is the Discovery 3 series that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, really exciting new launch, and that's already being shipped. Is that right?
Yeah, that's live. That's already being shipped. We were not at ISE this year in Europe, or else we probably would have done a launch of it there. We sort of did a soft launch in the beginning of the year here, and it's been out on demo with a lot of our customers. It's on our website, and it's actually been shipping since the beginning of the year.
Nice. So go a little bit more into detail about the Discovery 3 series.
Yeah.
What do those products do?
Yep. So Discovery 3, number one, builds upon the Discovery family that Hall had launched a few years ago, Discovery 1 and Discovery 2. And the Discovery family of products has been our our highest selling product in the AV space over the past 3 years. It's a very reliable product. It's an affordable product that fits a need, and it works really great in this corporate and education environments. And that typically consists of some kind of a wall plate HD-based transmitter with some kind of a box-based receiver with USB peripherals and connections to it. And, USB in the USB 2.x series. Now, what Discovery 3 does is it takes that same family and builds upon it and expands it. It adds USB 3.x support, as we talked about. That gives you the higher bandwidth, it gives you the charging, gives you more compatibility with products. But it also, now we've expanded the family to be more than just a wall plate and a receiver that's kind of locked into a configuration. A lot of the feedback we have from our customers where we love the products, but could we also maybe get a wall plate receiver to match a wall plate transmitter? Or could we get a box transmitter to go with a wall plate receiver? In other words, the request was, can we mix and match the styles so that in my customer's application, whether it's a conference room or a classroom, I can put this under a table or on a table or into a floor box or into a tabletop cubby or behind a display or in an equipment rack. They change all the time, right? So having that flexibility is key. And so that's what we've done with the Discovery 3 family, is we've set up the transmitters and the receiver to both be available in the box version transmitter and the wall plate transmitter, and the receiver to be a wall plate or a box version. That means you can have a traditional wall plate to box solution. You could have now a box to box solution. You could have a box to wall plate or a wall plate to wall plate solution if your application requires that. So this family of products really lets you do a lot more for the application, for the room you're installing this into for your customer. And that really starts to make it very powerful. Plus, it gives you the charging on there. And then in addition, we took the family of products and we expanded it by adding display link chip, which we'll probably talk about a little bit more coming up, which allows us to break video out. So even if you're coming in USB-C, you can break it out to HDMI on the other side. That's a really big deal. And it really, because again, so many of these laptops are coming in USB-C now. You don't have an HDMI output. So you've got to go in USB-C. You don't want to have to just transmit only, your data. You want video to go across there too. And now you can do that and break that out. I said USB-C, that's another big thing. When you go to the Discovery 3 family, we introduced the USB-C style connector now, standard on those products, which makes a big difference. And just again, having the USB 3.2 technology built into it, we're getting the full bandwidth of that technology now, which is going to allow for greater compatibility with the products in that room. Because let's be honest, when you're putting a room together, you don't always use the same brand for every product in that room. In fact, some companies don't specialize in every product. You got a special kind of camera in there, or a special kind of interactive flat panel display with touchscreen feedback, or a DSP in the room. You need to be able to control those via USB. Some of them are going to have higher bandwidth requirements, and the USB 3.2 is going to give us a much wider field of compatibility to help ensure that you're going to be able to talk to all the products in that application.
So you
So
mentioned
that's
display link.
yeah.
And, so talk about some of the differentiators of your products from others that might be on the market. What makes yours so special?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Quickly, we touched on some of them already. For example, the ability to mix and match the solutions, the wall plate to box and back and forth. That's a big differentiator. The ability to have charging, standard 60 watt or optional 90 watt. That's a huge differentiator on a product. And then you touched on it real quick there when you said display link, as I mentioned earlier. So yes, what display link does, display link's another chip. We pair that with the HD base T chip, which we use from our friends Valens, a tremendous semiconductor company. They make the best products. Their HD base T chips are used in our transmitters and receivers. But on that receiver end, we need to be able to take the video from there. Because remember, on the transmit side, we're coming in USB-C. We want to take the video signal now and find a way to break it out. So one of our receivers in the Discovery 3 family, which is the Discovery 3-V2, V for video, and 2 because this particular product has 2 HDMI video ports on it. So we use the display link chip to talk with the Valens chipset, and then it breaks the video out now and presents it over those 2 HDMI connections, those outputs that are on the receiver. Now, this is really significant and a big differentiator because it allows whether you're in a corporate application or education application, like you mentioned earlier, you can now have 2 displays on your wall, each showing different content at the same time. And why is that important? Well, number one, it's important because you get 2 displays and allows you to show multiple sets of content. For example, my live presentation on one screen of whatever I'm presenting, and on the other screen, my remote audience, like you might have in an online session. You can see them now on different screens. So that's a huge advantage. But in addition to that, you've got the ability now, and when you think about laptops, and that's probably what most of the sources are, the laptops today, whether a Windows-based laptop or a Mac laptop, you're getting the ability out of these advanced machines to create multiple desktops, if you will, of video at the same time. So what that means is if I got a laptop and I open it up, I'm looking at my laptop screen and maybe I'm the presenter and I don't want anybody to see that content. It's just for me. I can keep it on my laptop. I connect it to the Hall transmitter and receiver for Discovery 3. It goes out to the V2 Discovery 3 receiver with 2 video displays. And so my laptop now has 2 more desktops for separate content, different than what I have on my computer. We can do this because the computers have the power to have 3 different video streams coming out of them. And the Discovery 3 product takes advantage of that. and allows you to keep your laptop in a private while showing two other streams, so those two displays on your wall. And this can all be done for this price point of Discovery 3, which is, again, transmitter receiver. We've been using these in the industry for years. This is pretty standard. The pricing's pretty set on this. But to get this kind of functionality with multiple displays off of a laptop, you would have to go beyond this class of product into something more expensive. So now in this class of product, with this kind of pricing that integrators are used to, you now have this great new feature that's now going to be native to the solution at this price point. So it's really, in my opinion, it's a game changer. And the feedback that we've already had this year on this product from all the integrators in the industry are just, through the roof. It's what everyone's been asking for a while. And we've just been kind of waiting for this USB technology to get here so we could do this with it.
Oh, that sounds great, and it's going to be nice at InfoComm. I can't wait to see it at InfoComm in person. Uh, it's the little things. You don't need to go looking for these like whiz bang new technologies. This is a new technology that's really going to. It's small, but it's really going to fix a whole lot of problems. So this is going to be very exciting.
Yeah, it sure is, and you're right. We'll be there at InfoComm. 5886 is the booth. We're right in the middle, out on the floor, and we'll have Discovery 3 there. Something else, as I'd mentioned on a quick side note, not a lot of people know this about Hall Technologies, but we also make monitors, displays, particularly for the medical industry. But a lot of that crosses over into the Pro AV side of it, and so we'll actually, and some of those are interactive displays, allowing for to a touchscreen. So inside the Hall booth, you'll see the full Discovery 3 setup running to two displays. They're Hall displays, they're interactive touch panels, and you'll see the two-way interaction working there. So it's a great place to come by and check that out.
Great, we'll see it live in action.
Mm-hmm.
Ken, before we leave, tariffs is it's on everybody's mind, and would love to hear what you've got going on for and what you plan on for Hall Technologies.
Yeah, tariffs certainly have been the hottest topic lately, for sure. The first thing I would say about tariffs and as they relate to Hall is we're not the kind of company that's going to come out and make any kind of a knee-jerk reaction on pricing. There's a lot of shifting politics and decisions that need to be made around tariffs, and then those, as we've seen, happen weekly, if not daily, sometimes. And so you're not going to see Hall come out and say, "Hey, we're changing prices," and then 2 days later, "Oh, we're changing prices back." What our official statement is, at least right now, where we are for all of Q2, there will be no change to our prices. You can go ahead and move forward with Hall products, spec them in as you would. We don't plan to make any changes based on where tariffs are currently. Now, as we get close to the end of Q2, if there are significant changes made to the policy, we'll reevaluate that, like I'm sure anybody would. But given the fact that we have a great amount of stock already in the U.S. to cover those products, and with a number of the exemptions that the administration put in place a few weeks ago, it exempts a good number of products. So we're not in a position where we're going to make any changes to pricing. We want our customers to know that.
Great. Well, thank you for that clarification. And with that, we'll see you at InfoComm.
Sounds good. Thank you. See you there.
Bye.